I think it was probably one of the most important things that happened in the history of higher education and also other large Catholic institutions that are today largely run by lay people. How it happened, I guess, if I take it back to the oak tree, is the fact that I did my doctoral thesis in theology on the place of the layman in the church. And of course, I was greatly heartened when during Vatican II, that was quite a few years later, they came out and practically paralleled and almost repeated what I had said in my thesis, that lay people should be given significant tasks in the church commensurate with their competence, their intelligence, their dedication to the kingdom of God, and their very special knowledge of things like television, for example, or how to run a golf course, or how to build a good building and do it reasonably, architecture, a hotel. I mean, you look at a modern university, it has just everything apart from the central core of the academic development.
Please welcome Triple Domer Edward Hahnenberg from the undergraduate class of 1995, Master of Arts class of 1997, and Ph.D. class of 2002. Ed is the director of the TUI Center for Interreligious Understanding at John Carroll University and is the author of Theodore Hesburgh's CSC, Bridge Builder.
Anyone who ever encountered Father Ted walked away with a story. Here's mine. When I was a graduate student here, I had a study carrel on the 12th floor of the library. It was a really small space, just big enough for a desk, but it had a spectacular view of campus. It was the same view, I bragged to my friends, that Father Ted had, whose much larger office was directly above mine. By then in his 80s, Father Ted still came into work just about every day. And one of the great things about working on the 12th floor is that I often got to ride the elevator with him. Now, Father Ted loved to talk to students and share stories. And he'd usually begin by asking some unsuspecting undergraduate, "So what are you studying today?" And if the student said, "Well, I've got a physics exam tomorrow," he would say something like, "Hell, I was never much into science. Well, till the Pope asked me to represent the Vatican on the International Atomic Energy Commission." Or if a student said she had a paper to do for a history class, he would say, "I don't think I ever really appreciated history until I marched with Martin Luther King Jr." So I'll never forget the time that Father Ted turned to me in the elevator and said, "So what are you studying today?" And I said, "I'm working on my dissertation in theology." "Really? My dissertation was in theology. What's your topic?" "I'm writing on lay ministry in the Catholic Church." "Really? My dissertation was on the laity in the church." And in those days, it was a very controversial topic. This was the early 1940s, and no serious theologian was talking about the laity. My advisor told me to pick another topic, but I knew it wasn't too important, and so I pushed ahead and finished that thesis, got it published. And soon thereafter, I got a letter from the Holy Office in Rome asking for a copy to review. I thought for sure I was going to be censured. It used to be called the Holy Office of the Inquisition. But I sent in the copy and never heard back. Well, eventually Pius XII died, and the cardinals elected John the 23rd, who surprised everybody by calling the Second Vatican Council, the first time in 100 years that a council had been called. And what do you know was on the agenda? The laity. I'll never forget that, reading that document on the laity when it came out. They stole all my ideas. It was a great story, and it was clearly a story that Father Ted loved to tell. No doubt it got better over time. And though it might be too much to conclude that Father Ted was the unknowing ghostwriter of Vatican II's decree on the lay apostolate, his choice of the thesis topic was prescient. 20 years before the theme would burst out at the Second Vatican Council, Father Ted was interested in the active role of the laity. He was convinced that the people in the pews can't be silent spectators, that they are called to leadership and service in the church and in the world. 60 years after he finished his dissertation, I finished my own. And I didn't get a letter from the Holy Office in Rome, but I have been able to spend the last 25 years studying lay ministry in the American Catholic Church. And for me, it has been an endlessly fascinating phenomenon to get to know so many of these incredible laymen and laywomen who are responding to a call to serve their church and their community as pastoral associates, as catechetical leaders, as youth ministers, as outreach coordinators, and in many other roles. There are over 40,000 professional lay ministers staffing Catholic parishes in this country. They outnumber parish priests by a wide margin. They outnumber religious sisters. They outnumber religious brothers and permanent deacons combined. As I said, it has been an endlessly fascinating phenomenon to follow. So has Father Ted. After that elevator ride, I read his dissertation and went on to read just about everything he ever wrote. I was interested in him as a theologian, and so I wrote a couple of articles on his theological sources and published this book, Theodore Hesburgh, CSC, Bridge Builder. That subtitle, Bridge Builder, the theme of our event this year, captures so much of what Father Ted was about. When he was asked what he wanted written on his headstone, Father Ted famously answered one word: priest. From the age of 6 to the day he died, Father Ted knew he was called to be a priest. He also came to learn through his theological study that St. Thomas Aquinas defined a priest as a mediator, as someone who stands between God and humanity, someone who serves in the middle, spanning the gap between two realities, trying to bring together, to unite that which is apart. That's what it means to stand in persona Christi, in the person of Christ. It is to imitate Jesus, the great high priest, who was the ultimate bridge builder. And the point of Father Ted's dissertation was to say that all Christians are called to be priests. All Christians are called to the priesthood of all the faithful, to be bridge builders, to step into the breach, to bring people together. It was that call that inspired me to undertake a new initiative at John Carroll University. Having studied the collaboration between lay ministers and ordained ministers within the Catholic Church, I wanted to extend that spirit across religious boundaries. And so with my colleagues, I established the TUI Center in Interreligious Understanding. And a month into directing that new center, on October 7th, 2023, Hamas attacked and brutally killed innocent civilians in Israel, launching the war in Gaza and unleashing the really horrific, heartbreaking loss of life that has, continues to this day. We in the center quickly realized that even on the quiet campus of John Carroll University, tucked into the suburbs of Cleveland, we had Muslim students who had extended family starving in refugee camps in Gaza. We knew Jewish students who didn't feel safe on campus. So we worked hard to support our community in ways that we could. Right? We brought Muslim students, faculty, and staff together with Jewish students, faculty, and staff for regular lunch conversations, just to build relationships. In the aftermath of the Dobbs decision, we invited scholars of Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam to talk about how their traditions understand the dignity of human life, especially the lives of mothers and their children. We looked at how these three traditions understand the violent passages within their own sacred texts. We created a calligraphy course that teaches both Hebrew script and Arabic script as a way to enter into the world of another. We partnered with mosques and synagogues, churches, in order to foster collaboration. I have found the TUI Center and the center to be a place of deep conviction, where we don't have to check our beliefs at the door, but we bring them with us in order to learn from one another and find common cause. Father Ted was a bridge builder who never sacrificed, who never compromised his deeply held Catholic commitments. He stood in the middle, but he stood for something. That was his legacy as a priest, as a mediator. And I think if he were with us today, he would want to remind us that we are all priests. We are all called to be bridge builders. We are all called to be saints of the center, bringing people together. And that's a call that belongs as much to the laity as it does to the ordained. So I invite you all to reflect this afternoon throughout this program and afterwards. What have we done? What are we doing? What can we do to tear down barriers between people? What can we do to build bridges? What better way to follow where Father Ted led and to respond to what Father Ted said?